Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Go With Your Gut podcast. My name is Lauren Dreyer, your host, and today we are talking about getting through the no's because I find that we have, dreams, goals, all the different things. And we've talked a lot about the fact that life throws a lot of things at us. And sometimes it gets really discouraging. Um, sometimes not everybody understands. And, there's a big saying, I'm sure you've heard it, that you don't get 100% of the opportunities that you don't take. And that can be a double-edged sword, in my opinion, because we get a lot of opportunities and life throws a lot of things at us, but we're not meant to take all of them. And sometimes we get so many opportunities and people coming at us saying, here, do this, here, do this, here, do this. Would you like to do this? Or I'd love to work with you, and all of those things. And it can be a little bit of a ego stroke sometimes when people are like, hey, you'd be great for this, or I want to work with you with this, or you'd be a great fit for whatever it is. And you're kind of like, oh, thanks. Yeah, I want to do that. Or you get an idea and it's like, hey, I'm going to run with this because it seems like it would serve exactly what I'm doing. And then maybe sometimes you get stretched too thin or it doesn't go as you'd planned. And so then things start to not work out and we get discouraged and we're kind of like, hey, why is this not working out? Why is this not happening? Like I'm taking the opportunities, I'm putting the work in, I'm putting the time in, but it's not happening. So another thing you could say is it's another form of a no. No, this isn't what's going to get you there. No, this is not the vehicle that you need to use to make happen what you're trying to make happen, essentially. So I want to pose a question because um, it's been on my heart lately of how often do we get stuck in the no's? And maybe that is somebody literally telling you, no, you can't do this. No, it's not going to work. Or no, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't keep going. And sometimes that gets really, really discouraging, especially when it kind of is a recurring thing. And you're like, okay, is it time to cut bait? Is it time to say, you know what, this is not any longer worth my time. It's not worth my effort. Depending on the investment, it's not worth my money, whatever that looks like. And sometimes we hear some of these things from people who are close to us, and it's really hard to hear it from those people. And, we'd want to do everything we can to um, maybe protect the relationships, um, protect whatever it is we need to protect. And maybe we think, oh, this person has my best interest in mind. And while that may be 100% true, sometimes people don't get it. And that's not entirely on them because depending on what you're doing, depending on the direction that you want to go, not everybody has to get it and not everybody will get it. And that's a really, really hard lesson to learn when you want external validation of, hey, you're doing great. Hey, you're doing the right thing. And hey, I support you. And you may be getting that from other places and maybe just not the places that you really want it. And sometimes we got to be okay with that and saying, no, this is what I want to do. This aligns with where I want to go and what I want to do. And it's a building block. And we have to look at the different how we work and what type of maybe personality we are compared to the other people. And I find that those are the times that we get truly tested. And will you keep going? Will you um, let some of the no's go in one ear and out the other? Maybe not all of it, but just the you need to stop going. Will you let that go in one ear and out the other? Will you say, yeah, I hear you, but and you may be right on some of this, but that doesn't change the fact that this is what I want. This is what I'm passionate about. And honestly, it's what makes me happy. So depending on if you're part of a group, part of a big project, or no matter what it is, and you keep hearing no's, that is when I would ask you to really do a gut check before you get to the point where you're just like, okay, do I cut bait? Do I be done with this? What do I do? And the hard part to hear about that is nobody can decide that but you. And every once in a while, all we want is to be told what we need to do so that we don't have to be responsible for making that decision and ultimately living with it, right? So before you decide to just cut bait, be done with it, think about a couple of different things before you do that. Are you going to be happy if you give it up? And let me add this to that is when you give something up that is maybe adding pressure, adding stress, maybe adding strain to something, when you give something up that is providing that in your life, you will naturally feel lighter. But if you give it up, will you be happy that you give it up? Will you be able to move on easy? Or will you, if you give it up, will it come back and you say, well, I didn't want to give that up? Will it start to make you resentful, thinking, well, I didn't want to, but this person made me give it up. And yes, I have time for other things now. And I'm not quite as stretched, but I really enjoyed that. I really wanted to do it. Will that be the situation if you give it up? Will you be resentful? And is it something that you're just passionate about and you don't want to give it up? Maybe it needs to happen some other way, or maybe you need to think about it different. But if you cut bait and give it up, will you be happy? Will you ultimately be mad? And I've heard this a couple of times, and I think it probably plays true into this scenario is when you get to that final moment of life, will you be upset that you didn't just keep going and get through the opposition and get through the no's, get through the criticism? Or will you be okay if you gave this up? We hear a lot that one of the number one things that people say at the end of life is, I regret not going for this, or I regret not keeping going, or giving this everything I had. And will that be you if you give it up? And that's kind of a heavy piece to that, but it is something to consider. I've learned a big kind of lesson in life, and it comes back to be something in the back of my head all the time. But it's something that is true in sales as well as in life is sometimes you have to go through a lot of no's in order to get to those yeses. I have been told, okay, I want you to go out and see how many no's you can get so that you can get those out of the way and get to the yeses. So in life, things are going to come at you and you're going to have to get through those tough things to get to the yeses. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen on our timetable. It happens on the timetable in which we can't control. So think about how bad you want it. If you're willing to go through the no's, through the criticism, and through the opposition, is it worth it for you to do that, to get to that big old place, that big old dream, that big old outcome that you so desperately desire, or is it not worth it? And trust that when the time is right, when it comes from the right place, the yes will come. But sometimes you have to get through the no's before you can get to the yeses. And when it doesn't happen how we want it to, when it doesn't happen how we think it's going to happen or on our timetable, it's discouraging, it's frustrating, and it gets to that place where maybe everybody is right and I just need to cut bait. But only you can decide if it is right to cut bait, if it's time to cut bait, or if it's no, I'm going to keep going with this. And it is what it is, because this is what I want. This is where I want to go. And this aligns with maybe who I am as a person. So I want you to go with your gut. I want you to feel deep in that gut. If you're in this place, and make that decision to either dig down deep, get the grit, and say, I'm going to keep going no matter the circumstances, and the right people will find me and I will find the support, or, yep, it's time to cut bait. So as always, please go with your gut, go with that gut, and then keep going.